So I woke up this morning and the song that was on my mind, and every fucking, when you get a song in your mind and it just
Can't get it out.
But it was Duran Duran's Rio. Her name is Rio and she dances on the floor. But it just takes me back to when I was a nipper, when I was a kid. And it was about 82, 83, 84. Some people say that the 82, 83, 84 genre of music was terrible, but I actually think it was fantastic.
Well, I think there's two versions of 80s music. There's the cheesy, dodgy versions, and then there's the cool versions.
So what would you call cheesy, dodgy?
Oh, there's some dodgy, cheesy songs that I listen to that are from the 80s. That
like, are you talking ABBA stuff?
Oh, that was more 70s, I think.
Right.
But I definitely have some, I can't even tell you what some of them are. But then I know when I met you and Ange, and you were Ange was definitely into
Common
some of the,
Bronski
those
beat.
sorts of, some of those that were much cooler than the things that I was listening to at the time. So I think there's two types of, types of.
Well, I think there was the way I saw it was there was British 80s.
Well, maybe that's what it was, because some of those ones were
I
lot better.
never heard or listened to any Australian 80s because we just didn't get it. Apart from The Voice, what is his name?
John Farnham.
John Farnham. Yeah. That was the only song that I think ever made it out of Australia to England at the time.
Right.
And then the rest was 80s rock, which was coming out of the US. Van Halen and all those guys.
Yeah,
and then
so
there was
some of
also
that
the
stuff was
electro
cool.
scene. You had Axel F. You had and then you also had the French guy. What was his name? That did all the Jean-Michel Jarre.
Yeah.
He was really responsible for. And then there was that other one. Who was that guy? He was an American. Anyway, it was a huge explosion of music back then. I just loved it, and especially when that electronic music was just starting to become popular.
At the end of the 80s.
Beginning of the 80s, end of the 80s, then it was just full-blown rave scene. But beginning of the 80s, you had a lot of breakdance stuff. You had Breakdance the movie, you had Electric Boogaloo, you had who are the other guys? Grandmaster Flash.
I didn't know about all of them at any of that younger age.
Oh,
it was
really?
just what was on the Australian radio, because I didn't get.
Yeah.
I wasn't exposed to that until I was a bit older. So yes, some of my 80s music's quite cheesy.
Yeah.
But I like it anyway.
Give me one cheesy 80s
I can't
song
think
that
of any at the moment. I don't think well under pressure like that. I have to think. I need time, and then I'll be like 5 hours later. Go, oh yeah, that's one of the songs.
5 hours.
The problem is that we won't be on this podcast. If I think about it, if one comes to me on the podcast, I'll let you know.
Okay, what are we discussing?
What are we talking about today? I actually can't remember.
We were going to talk about raising kids, wasn't it?
Oh, parenting, yes. About raising resilient kids and how to do it, and doing your best to raise resilient kids and what's kind of required.
I think one of the things, being a father, is that kids have resilience in them. The objective really is to nurture the resilience in a child. Do you know what I mean? Of all the animals born into the physical world, we're the least evolved, so we are the most vulnerable when we turn up.
I mean, you say that a lot. You probably need to explain that.
Well, if
what
we
do
were
you
any
mean
more
by that?
physically evolved, we wouldn't make it through the birthing canal.
So it means that we're the species that requires that fourth trimester and the continuation of the bond post birth, right?
But also,
because
physically we're not able to defend ourselves.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We're the least evolved of all the animal creatures that ever turn up in the world. So we have to, resilience is something that's being built in us. We have it, but it has to be nurtured with a child.
So actually, it might be worthwhile talking a little bit about that, because a lot of people suggest, because that fourth trimester, once the baby's born, and a lot of parents will, put their kids in their own rooms and try and get them resilient that way.
Yeah.
I actually don't know enough about it in terms of full documentation or any of that sort of stuff to be able to communicate it as effectively, probably. But there's there's all this study talking about how attachment parenting actually builds more resilient children.
Yeah.
And it's not a plus or minus for anybody who doesn't do it in that way, but the attachment and having the kid with you and close to you and having them, there's a lot to be said about the attachment and how the kid, it's something to do with how the child bonds with you and the amount of safety that they know they have, that it's almost like they push away knowing that they can come back, and they push away knowing that they can come back, and they push away knowing that and each time they push away further, and it's at that safety element, knowing that they have that safe spot to land, which helps them to actually become more resilient. Because I remember, you know, when you guys were first, you know, I remember Anne just spoken to me about it, about when Lexi was born and how people were telling her about how to parent, and the books were telling about the crying and all the bits and pieces.
There was one particular book which was just, if you read it now, it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's one of, it's one of the standard books. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, and it's all about the controlled crying and stuff like that, and letting and
it's wrote by a woman that has no children.
Right.
She never had children.
Yeah.
Which is just like crazy.
Well, so I think anyway, the attachment part I think is a big part to play in how the kids needing to have that basis of safety and that pace. And attachment parenting doesn't create attached children. It creates independent children.
That's right.
Because of the way they're set up in their early environment.
But the delusion is that the separation of a child from the bed or from the bedroom actually creates independent children, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
It creates insecure children, and it creates a neediness.
Well,
in the child.
it's also an inability to be able to regulate their emotional, their nervous system. So, that being
so
said,
it's important
I think
to just talk about that for a second, of regulating an emotional system, because in order to regulate the child, to regulate their emotions, they have to be around a scenario where they are, when they are emotional. And because when a child is screaming or yelling or doing all that sort of stuff, they're not actually in pain. All they're doing is they're just learning that part of themselves.
They've got a big emotion, and they don't know how to communicate it, so they'll express it in a different way, right? Yeah. So those foundational years where they have that safety net. I remember, I think out of your three, as much as all of them have different methods of doing things, always the one Lola that would be like 0 to 100 and she was totally fine or she was totally unfine. There was no grey. There was literally no grey. And I remember Lexi, you didn't even know whether she was hungry or not. You know, she would mumble a bit. Lola went from perfectly smiling and happy to I'm dying now this minute if you don't give me food.
There were times when I heard Lola cry, and as a parent, when you first become a parent, you know, the first child and them crying, you think, fuck, is something wrong? And it wasn't until somebody said to me, no, when they're doing that, it's just they're learning. It's a bit like opening and closing their fingers and learning to have a hand. You know, it's just a learning process. They're not actually going through anything, and they're not actually in pain. And if they are in pain, you'll know it. Yeah. If they have got something on, you'll just know. You just naturally know. So there's when a child is born, there's a lot that has to be relied on in terms of the connection between the parent and the child. Yeah. And that's what, we'll get into the resilience. That's what builds resilience, is the connection. So separating or severing that connection at infant's age is a really silly thing to do. Yeah. But just let me finish. When a child is doing that and they have that emotion and they have that stuff going on, the child has to be able to feel their own way through things. Yeah. And that's a process. So with Lola, what would happen with Lola was like 0 to 100, as you said. Yeah. And there were times when Lola would cry, and she would cry so crazily, like it was so, it was visceral. It was terrifying. I would run into the room thinking, "Fuck, what the hell is going on?" And then you'd run in. As soon as you'd run in, she'd stop. Yeah. And then as soon as you fed her, she was fine and laughing. And Lola's still like that today. 100%. Lola can go from 0 to 1 billion in the blink of an eye. She doesn't do it. She might do it once or twice a year.
It's not as often now.
No.
It's still that process of from here to here. I think that one of the things with Lola, though, and like you just said, it's like the minute she knew she was safe and the minute she had that safe space, she was able to calm. So it was her resilience for herself is learning how to be able to create that for herself. Yeah. And as she grows and as she matures and as she gets into teenage years, those moments aren't as frequent, but they're just as intense when they occur. And in those moments, it's really about how to bring herself back to herself. But that is very, very difficult to do in the teen years if you haven't set that up in the early years, right? And so you and Ange really helped set that up. And I remember I was there for some of those moments with Lola when she would sleep over, or when I was at your place. And I remember really, I did it with all your kids and all my nieces and nephews when I was putting them to bed and stuff like that. But little things like matching your breathing to their breathing and changing just letting them know that you were okay. Lola, I remember very consciously doing that to let her know that she was okay, to let her know that she was safe. In that, those extremes get, kids can do that in their family homes, and it's better that they do that in their family homes because they know they're safe in those moments. Yeah. And I know that, Lexi's had a few tough times. Ollie's gone through his little moments as well. In them having the space to be able to vent, and to be able to communicate, to be able to let it all out in that family safe environment, it gives them the ability to learn resilience, to be able to understand a little bit more. And I think that for me, how I see resilience being built in kids is exactly the same way as you would build it in adults, essentially. But you've got to set it up that, like at the end of the day, no one's going to come in and rescue you. So at the end of the day, you've got to go and learn the skills. The thing with kids is they don't have those skills. So if you, it's like a butterfly coming out of, or the caterpillar coming out of the cocoon, right? If you help it, it doesn't grow its wings. If you're watching a child in frustration and they're trying to learn something, and very oftentimes, and I've got people in my family that do this, they don't allow the kids to go through the levels of frustration they need to go through in order to solve the problem. And when they don't have the ability to solve the problem and somebody comes in and rescues them, it builds this sense of, if I have a problem, the solution's got to come immediately. Yeah. And if it doesn't come immediately, then they're like all hell breaks loose. And then there's frustration, there's anger, instead of the parent encouraging the frustration, encouraging the pushing back on letting the child be okay, going, you've got this, it's a bit tricky, but can you think about this way or this way? I saw a great example of it with on a meme or something, literally just this last week. I didn't know we were going to be talking about this. And there was this little kid, and she was in a basket, and she was stuck in the basket, and the dad was talking her through, saying, you can do this, you just maybe have to move this, and it was a really young baby that any other adult would have gone in, picked the baby up and moved it across, and there's times you've got to do that. But it was really beautiful to watch, because you could see at the end that as much as this baby was frustrated and not being able to get out of this basket, the minute that they got out, they were so proud. You could see the pride that this little kid had in themselves for being able to do it. Right. And the way that the dad talked her through and encouraged her and let her know it was okay and she'd got it and maybe she just tried again, and it was so lovely. And it was just, to me, it was a good example of, if you want patience, you're not going to get... If you want your kids to learn patience, you're not going to just give them things when they ask for them. If you want them to learn strength, you're not going to make things easy for them. They have to learn to be resilient. They have to be able to deal with tough situations in their own ways and at their own levels. With this, to me, that environment of guidance and support to let them know that they're safe while they're doing that.
Yeah, I think, it's when I think back of the times when I know a lot of people will be thinking, but when you're in the height of it,
Oh, I mean, that's we're only talking about we don't talk about every moment, because
no, because
you're
in the height of it. It's a fucking.
Oh, you can't do that in every moment.
When you haven't slept properly for fucking 6 weeks, and you got this child who just has colic or is just can't settle properly, and you don't know how to settle the child, and everybody's telling you what to do, and the key is that none of it's permanent, and none of it's personal. It's not personal. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It doesn't mean that the child's going to be like this forever. And And it doesn't mean that anything that you're doing, there is no wrong. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to fuck it up. Whatever you're doing is whatever you're meant to do. As long as you're tackling, and as long as you understand the journey, and you're participating in the journey, and you're doing everything you can to learn for yourself. And you're not just taking it from a book. You're monitoring what fits for the child.
I think that includes, though, Mitch, like, I think that those moments of despair and frustration that the parent has, and how the parent handles that ongoing is also how you build resilience in children, because a parent is never going to get it right 100% of the time. So modelling how to get it wrong and to either just be able to take yourself out of the environment for a small amount of time, or being able to repair if you do get if something happens that goes awry, and especially when you've got older kids and you can communicate it to them, to be able to come back and go, I didn't handle that very well. I could have done it this way. Yeah. To me, that's just as much as what builds resilience in kids, because they're watching their parents being able to monitor their own nervous system. You can't build the resilience in a child if you don't know how to do it for yourself.
And you also can't build the resilience in the child if you're hunting immediate gratification. You know what I mean?
No,
like if you're trying to just gratify the child based on the fact that they're crying, or if you don't know how to manage your emotions when the child is in that situation, because the child is doing what you do. 100%. They're not doing what you say.
100%.
And the more you give immediate gratification, the more the child becomes needy and wants immediate gratification and doesn't build resilience, doesn't learn how to handle a situation, later in life, because it's all 0 to 8. Those formative years are so important. And, we've parents, when we talk about that, we've parents all the time that look at us and go, oh, my God, I think I fucked my kids up. And it's important to understand you can't...
Every parent has a moment of that.
Yeah. And we, there's times where I've gone, fuck, how do I undo that? And one of the cool pieces of advice you used to give me was, you used to say to me, if you fuck it up, go in and tell them. Yeah. Sit down with them, have the conversation, say, hey, listen, that was me, it wasn't you. Yeah. I got that wrong. I shouldn't have done that like that. And kids will immediately go, oh, okay, no problem. And they don't even think about it. Yeah. But if you don't do it, you'll have it on your mind forever. Every time you see them do something, you'll have it on your mind forever. Moving to kids, when we had read that book on controlled crying, we also we were having trouble getting Lexi to settle. And we paid for this woman to come out. And she came out.
Sleep specialist.
Sleep specialist. And she came out and she showed us, okay, because Lexi would lie there awake, and she'd say, okay, move over here, just move away. First thing is don't make any eye contact. Then move a little bit away from the cot. Then move over to the wall. Then move over to the door. And then move outside the room. But in actual fact, that's controlled crying. That's what controlled crying is. And then what we learned is that the way to be able to get the kids to get to sleep, and Lexi was Lexi was a 10-pounder. She was a fucking big baby when she was born. But the way that we learned to get the kid to sleep, really, once we learned how to do that, then we mastered a whole lot of it. And that was really about, swaddling properly, making them feel as if they're in the womb so they're nice and tight and comfortable.
You were always really good at that.
I was always good at that.
I was so crap.
And then hold the child. But when I say hold the child, I mean holding the baby so that the baby can't actually move. You're not squeezing the child, but you're holding the baby so that they can't start to wriggle.
Almost mimicking the whole womb situation.
Yeah, the whole womb situation. So holding them and then holding them close to your chest. But the key thing was to never look at the baby. So I would hold her and I would just pat the baby on the back and I would just, shh, 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 shh. And then I would follow their breathing. That was another thing you taught me, follow their breathing. And then I just shh. And then for the first few times it didn't work, but then it did start to work because what happened for the kid is that the kid was actually looking forward to me doing it because that was a time to connect with dad. Yeah. And then I was able to put the baby down and walk out and cover them and they were fine,
Yeah, they felt safe. They felt safe. Like they were,
And then putting them into the bed, I wouldn't put them into the cot, I'd put them into our bed. And putting them into our bed, we've a big king bed, so we'd move all the pillows away, everything would be out of the way. Putting them into the bed allowed the child to have the smells, so they would have the scent of mum, the scent of dad, so they felt safe, they felt secure, they felt warm, and then they were able to go to sleep. And then we started to co-parent, so then, not co-parent, what is it called?
Co-sleep.
Co-sleep. Then we started to co-sleep with the kid, and then the co-sleep we found was really, that was the one thing that paid off the most, was that, you know, even when we would go out anywhere with other kids that weren't co-sleeping, you know, a lot of the time the other parents, and it's neither good nor bad, it's just what it was, but a lot of the time the kids were very needy. Our kids were always independent. I could go down the park and they would just take off.
That's what I'm saying about the attachment parenting or that co-sleeping situation, is because they know that they've got that. They know that there's a safe space to land.
Yeah.
And so it gives the kids the ability to move away, because that's what you want your kids to be able to do. The best job, the parent knows they've done their job once their kid goes off and lives their own lives and doesn't need them anymore. But in that safety space, they need that safety space to come back to.
Yeah.
And so even to this day, your kids love that nighttime ritual if they can get it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because of that, it just brings them back to that safe space. You said something earlier
last
about...
night, you reminded me of something yesterday, and last night I went home and played hide and go seek with them.
Yeah.
With Lexi and Lola and Ollie. I tried to get Lexi to play.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's a bad time of the month for her, but she was like, I'm reading, just I don't know. I was like, okay, no problem. But if you want to come play hide and go seek, it's no problem. But, you know, they're all of those little things that you do, those games, all of that stuff that you do is really building resilience in the child. But another thing that parents don't realise is that taking the kids down the park, and we used to hand our kids over to everybody. People come over and go, oh, can I hold the baby? Yep, there you go. Yeah. Other mothers would go, oh, no, she needs to, or no. On top of this, you know, when the baby goes down, people think they're building a safe environment for the child to sleep by being quiet. So we would put our kids down. We'd have music blaring. We'd have parties, and our kids would be fast asleep. She'd just sleep through the whole thing. Taking the kids down the park, letting the kids in the sand pit, playing with the dirt. Our kids would come home filthy, you know, playing with the dogs down the park. Dogs would come over and lick their faces. All of that stuff builds an immune system, resilience in the child, the ability to traveling with the kids. Like I had my kids up in some of the places where you just wouldn't take children.
100%.
You just wouldn't take children. Like you wouldn't take children up into the jungles of Peru, you know. But we did.
Yeah.
And we did that because I wanted from the beginning the kids to understand that freedom is important. That when there comes a time, they're going to be able to handle themselves and manage themselves.
Yeah.
And I thought that would happen in their teens, but that came very early. You know, Lola learned to manage herself and manage her school teachers, and Ollie as well manages his school teachers, manages his people, lets them know.
But this is the thing, though. When they can't do it or when they struggle with that, they can come home and they can vent and they can share that and they can communicate that. And they always know that there's a safe... Like, I just can't stress enough that safe space to land. But in that, you said something earlier, so before we finish up, I just really want to cover it. You were talking about... I can't remember what you were saying, but you were talking about in terms of being a parent. The way I see the resilience building with the kids is showing that the parent also has the resilience and the patience, because what I mean by that is if a kid is not, like, getting that immediate satisfaction for the kid is not going to pay off in the long term for the kid, because they don't build that muscle that requires them to put energy and effort into something and getting a return,
and
right?
To be patient.
And to be patient and take time with the thing. And this is one of the reasons that social media can be a bit destructive before a certain age, not because of the social media in itself, it's more because of what's going on in the brain, right?
Yeah.
But then the parent has to demonstrate the same thing. Your kid, it's like, I remember Anne saying once something, she said, I used to say this thing to her all of the time, I think it was Lola, and then one day she said the thing, she goes, it pays off in the end. Like, you don't realise that what they're learning and what they're picking up from you. But if you cannot demonstrate the resilience and patience, if you expect your kid to be able to do X, Y, Z in a certain amount of time, or be able to, they watch how you handle when things aren't going right. And like I said, this is not about in every moment you have to be that, because every parent has, you know, their breaking points and everyone's got to take whatever they need to take. But like, if you're struggling with a kid being able to handle something and you can demonstrate your resilience in being able to handle that, showing that you can handle their big emotions, showing that you can handle their situations, they learn how to pick up on that from you. And what I loved in watching Ange parent the girls particularly, because by the time Oliver came along, the girls were grown up enough to have gone through a lot of those stages. And
Ollie was going to learn from the girls.
And Oliver was going to learn, but she was automatically like that with Oliver. The girls, she had to do it on the fly with the two of them. Do you know what I mean? she learnt really about some of the attachment parenting while Lexi kind of part way through the parenting with Lexi, and then she really demonstrated it with Lola and Lexi. But Lexi would call her mum on it if she wasn't doing it. Yeah. Like, she's like, Mum, she's asking you to listen to her. And Lexi, at 4 years old, was and it was showing Ange that, I've done something right here, because she, she's like not listened to Lola for something. And Lexi's saying, Mum, Lola just wants you to listen to her, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it was lovely to watch, to be able to see, okay, she is not going crazy at Lola's big emotions because somebody has been there to handle hers, if that's the case, it really teaches them how to be able to just to handle them. I mean, resilience really is about being able to handle what comes your way. Yeah. That includes your own emotions. That includes the frustrations about, people and other, situations happening in your life. And being able to communicate about that. And I think if you can lead the way, and if you cannot give your kids everything that you think they require, in the sense of allow them to be a bit frustrated, allow them to be bored, allow them to, demonstrate patience and all of those sorts of things, your kids' resilience will grow when you can also demonstrate to them that you can do that. You know?
There's so much to be.
There's so many elements of that, though.
With that stuff, it's bonkers, but. Yeah, I think it's just important for parents to understand. I think looking into attachment parenting is very, very, very rich for anybody that's listening. And then also getting that it doesn't matter. No matter what happens, you're doing a great job. No matter what goes on, you're doing a great job. Yeah. And you teach them resilience when you're patient. Take your time. Don't try to fix them. There's nothing to mend. When they're crying and they're going bananas, they're not broken. You'll know when they're in pain. It's a different type of cry. You'll know when they're hungry. Hunger and pain are two completely different types of cry.
A mother just knows that, doesn't she?
You just know. And so does a father. I mean, 100%. I
think the both of you, because sometimes they would be they'd crying something, and I didn't understand what they were crying for.
But as a father, the reason that is because I spent a lot of time with my kids.
You were home,
When they were young, I always had them on me or near me, and I was always with them. I was always giving Ange a break, and I was always playing with them, and they'd sleep on me or they'd sleep next to me. So I always understood what was going on. So I could sense when something was right and something was wrong. Do you want to hear a funny story? Lexi last night says to me, she says to me, I think we were talking about Panadol or something for kids, right? And she said to me, she goes, I remember when we were living in the other house. And I'm like, she goes, I think I was like maybe 2.5, 3 years old, and you guys had given me a strawberry Panadol. And I said, yeah. She goes, I went and stole the box. And she said, I couldn't work out how to get them open. So she said, it took me about an hour and a half
that's
to work out how
to
Lexi.
Open.
Work out how to open. And she said, I ate them all. And I was like, are you kidding me? She goes, yeah, man, I ate every single one of them. She said, I hid under the bed and I ate every one of them.
Oh, my God. That's so Lexi.
So Lexi. But so bloody dangerous. You think you're
totally
doing the right thing, really dangerous. But she ate all the strawberry chewies.
I love the way that she just comes out and tells you the truth about that stuff. She's very cute.
She is.
Oh, dear.